One Piece has a very large catalog. Just a large catalog in general. Whether it goes from the chapters to the episodes to even the video games, the list of content just goes on and on and on, and the movies are no different from that, spawning 17 different films, including the very, very awful condensed arcs. And when it comes to One Piece, their movies are very hit or miss. Some are good, some are shit, some are just fun, while some are just not. But out of all 17 movies, the one that stands out the most both in story and in style is definitely the 6th movie, One Piece, Baron Omatsuri, and the Secret Island. Partly due to its animation style directed by the fantastic Japanese director Mamoru Hosoda, which I most definitely butchered, but also because of its extreme detachment from the rest of the series, due to how much it puts the Straw Hats through as a crew, and because of the darker content you wouldn't find in the rest of One Piece. So I'd like to go through the movie itself to explain why One Piece's best movie is also its darkest. While the plot itself feels very One Piece-like, the Straw Hats receive an invitation to an island resort on the Grand Line run by Baron Omatsuri, and the crew travels to the island intent on relaxing and having fun. Baron welcomes them to the resort and encourages them to enjoy themselves, but only after they complete the Trials of Hell. The movie only follows that summary up until the end of the first half of the movie, whereas the remainder of the film follows the more unsettling aspects of the antagonist, the Baron, as well as the conflict between the Straw Hats themselves. Keep in mind, this movie was made around the Skypiea and Long Ring Long Land time period. This was released about 3 months before we even got Luffy vs. Usopp in the anime, which would make this the first real animated conflict between the crew. Well, besides Zoro versus Luffy, but that doesn't count. And it does it amazingly for the most part. The issues I'll get into later, but the dialogue and scenarios between the crew the longer the movie goes on just makes them feel more real than they do in the rest of the franchise. Nothing that happens feels forced, it's all natural through the scenarios they're put through. I'm going to skip through the beginning of the movie because that is the part of the movie that feels the most like One Piece, and I will be skipping over to the second trial that the Straw Hats go through, where things really start to take a turn, because I don't think there's that much for me to really go over in the first part. The plot summary does basically sum up the majority of the first part of the movie. They fight this gigantic fish to try and catch it in order to beat the first mate of Omatsuri's crew, Muchigoro. As they do catch this fish, working together, as a team, as a crew and stuff, Muchigoro goes crying to his captain, and he gets mad trying to get the Straw Hats to do another trial just so that he can get payback for making his crewmate cry. Most of the Straw Hats don't want to do this, but Luffy, of course, being as he is, being Luffy, wants to continue going with the trials, but Nami gets mad at him, slaps him a bunch, and then tries to leave, but they cannot find their way back to the ship as they go through the forest. It's almost as like it was moved around. They run into the Baron again and are put through the second trial by force. Now Luffy, Chopper, and Robin are led back to the resort that they were promised in order to stay while the rest of the crew goes through the second trial because only 4 of them will be needed, with Nami and Usopp paired up and Zoro and Sanji paired up. While Zoro and Sanji do the usual Zoro and Sanji thing, Usopp and Nami work together for the most part at the beginning, up until Usopp gets trapped in a device that sends him gliding through the air, which Nami mistakes for him leaving her behind. As Usopp is going through the air, he sees a strange object past the clouds at the top of the mountain in the middle of the island. By the end of the trial is when it starts to take a turn, since Zoro and Sanji's inability to work together gets Sanji caught, which he holds against Zoro for the rest of the film. But of course, these two never get along, but this moment is much more serious and impactful compared to their usual bickering. It feels real, it's not just comedic relief, it's them actually holding something against each other. At this same moment, Usopp comes back to, save the day by getting them the win. However, Nami still believes he backstabbed her as she slaps him in the face and gets angry at him, which Usopp reacts with a very petty response calling backstabbing her specialty, which she then holds against him for the rest of the movie as well. While this goes on, Luffy, Chopper, and Robin all do their own individual snooping around the island. Luffy chases after a man throwing rocks at him, and once catching up to him, finds out this man named Brief is a captain of his own crew, and... Okay, yeah, we all noticed the damn mustache. It's Hitler. It's fucking Hitler. Now, moving on, he meets this man and is invited to join his crew, the Toothbrush Mustache Pirates. Luffy declines this offer, saying that no one on his crew will be joining the Toothbrush Mustache Pirates, and is then warned about the Baron, as Brief states that the Baron is known to break crews apart. Robin, meanwhile, is treated to a drink by the first mate of Baron's crew, Muchigoro, and gets him to reveal a secret about a flower known as Lily Carnation on the island's summit before leaving due to getting sick after drinking too much alcohol. Chopper, on the other hand, meets a family that hid from the Baron after failing the first trial long ago. A weak father dressed as a pirate and calls his crew by his family of 2 daughters and a son. They have their own cute little interaction to try and impress his kids, and by doing so the father agrees to tell Chopper the secrets of the island, more specifically about the Baron. The man, who goes by Papa for now, shows Chopper the ripped up bounty poster of the Red Arrow Pirates, the Baron's crew from many years ago, showing all of the people in his crew that we've seen on the island, though without the weird plants on their heads. The whole Omatsuri Island thing was all a lie, and it was all just a trap on the pirate island for the Baron to lure crews in and test their strength, which were his trials. Though Chopper notices something more intriguing to him than that, being that the Baron is the only member of the crew on the poster to have actually aged from that long ago. Immediately after finding out the secret of the Baron, a bow and arrow is shot right at him from the back. As the family runs away and Chopper is hit off screen, we're revealed that the Baron is the one who shot at him. We go back to the crew being together again outside of the resort with the exception of Chopper. Everybody is still mad at each other, which Robin asks for Luffy to take care of, but is quickly distracted and led off by the Red Arrows as they offer them a private dinner party for the crew, for some cooking event for Sanji to participate in. This is when the movie begins to feel less like One Piece. Nami still hasn't forgiven Usopp. She won't even be around him and just avoids him, rather going to talk to Muchigoro instead of him, and while Zoro and Sanji just, hate each other more than usual. Things take a dive to the deep end from this point on, as Usopp, while venting out in the forest, runs into an odd member of the Red Arrows right outside. Meanwhile, Robin leaves to discover a shipwreck when she was looking for the Lily Carnation, and Nami converses with Muchigoro, learning that the Red Arrows took the sea around the same time as Goldie Roger. But the odd thing about this conversation that they have is when he asks if she met him. But she says no because, Roger's been dead for over 20 years. But he says that can't be. He met him just recently. He claims to have met him before that fateful stormy night, which Nami then asks him about what happened on that night, which leads to Muchigoro breaking down and withering. While at the same time, Robin comes to the conclusion that the shipwreck she had just found belongs to the Baron, and he has been watching her from the wreck this entire time, offering to show her the Lily Carnation, or the Flower of Death and Rebirth. They then appear right in front of the mountain that holds the large object that Usopp had found earlier, and Robin is told that that is the Lily Carnation, as well as the flower on the shoulder of the Baron. After she discovers this, she's completely shook, and the Baron takes out his bow, taking her out as well. The remaining members, Nami, Sanji, Zoro, and Luffy, all quickly gather up and take notice that Robin and Usopp have both gone missing. You would think that with all of the crew members disappearing, going off on their own, and just not coming back, would help at least a bit to bring the crew together so that they would stop separating from each other. But it does the exact opposite, and just takes them apart even more, once again bringing more conflict and arguing between the crew over whose fault it is that everyone went missing. But soon enough, they stop arguing, and Sanji puts that blame directly at Luffy.
お前どうすんだよ。元はお前が始めたんだぞ。サンジ君。お前がこの島へ行くって決めたんだ。やめてよ。今更言うことじゃないでしょ。こんな風になった原因はルフィ、お前だ。俺。
The crazy thing about this is Sanji isn't wrong in this situation, though it's not the best place to say it, and everyone else is still at blame for, going off on their own and getting separated. Luffy is still the captain and is most responsible, yet he hasn't been responsible at any point in this movie. He kept the crew on the island just because he thought it would be fun. He kept getting distracted by the Baron and his tricks very easily when his crew was going missing. So it kind of is Luffy's fault for everything that's going on right now. Now he has to make up for it, but that doesn't exactly happen. And while Luffy does become a more responsible captain later on in the series, I don't think the reason we see these weaknesses is simply because of the things he was at this point on in the story, but because of the environment that the Straw Hats are in and the villain that they're facing against. When you really think about One Piece's villains, none of them are really focused on the Straw Hats. The Straw Hats are usually just an obstacle to them. They have this other goal, whether it relates to treasure or power or anything else, and then the Straw Hats are just standing in the way of that. And usually in One Piece, in typical shonen villain fashion, their way of trying to take the crew out is to just fight them. Whereas in this movie, it's taken a completely different direction. The Baron isn't focused on fighting the Straw Hats or getting anything else that they're standing in the way of. No, the Straw Hats are the target of the Baron, which makes it so much easier for him because his only focus is to take the crew out. It's part of what separates this movie from the rest of the franchise. There's little combat to go on throughout this movie. Other than that whole fish scene and scenes that are to come, there isn't really any fighting going on. The Baron has mostly been putting the Straw Hats through mind tricks, and while other One Piece villains of course do have that as, part of their whole character, none of them use it as their main way of getting what they want. They usually just do it through their powers and abilities because, it's a shonen series, but the Baron doesn't do that. We haven't even seen the Baron go through any sort of combat throughout this movie. He's mainly just been standing there. Sure, there were those times where he shot people with a bow and arrow, but that doesn't count as combat. Everything he's done has been more psychological. He's made the Straw Hats get mad at each other, turn against each other, not want to associate with one another. At this point in the movie, it's become clear that the crew is very torn apart. They're not working together. He's also been putting them through fear, such as Chopper and Robin. Nothing's been done out of brute force like so many other villains in One Piece do. The Baron has simply just completely toyed with the Straw Hats throughout this entire film, and that's what makes him such a good villain. This time the Straw Hats separate on their own terms, as the Baron tries to put them through another trial to find their friends. Luffy tries to fight off the Baron while the others go their own different paths, confronting different members of the crew. Luffy does not hold any chance against the Baron and quickly falls, but is saved by Brief, the captain of the Toothbrush Mustache Pirates, whereas the rest of the Straw Hats get shot and captured by the Baron, while his crew withers away. With the exception of Brief, Luffy is alone. His crew was taken away from him, which just leaves him and Brief. They chat in his base as Luffy learns that Brief's crew was also taken from him. He is the only member of his crew that remains. They were all fed to the Lily Carnation, and Luffy learns that that is the same thing that'll happen to the Straw Hats if he doesn't stop it. Chopper wakes up and tries to stop the giant flower from eating away the father's children, but by saving her, he gets caught by the Carnation to be fed to her. After learning of Brief's crew, Luffy heads back into battle, which leads into the final confrontation of the movie. The beginning of the final fight shows the Baron insulting Luffy, mocking his claim that he would never let him hurt his crew when he had already begun to feed the Straw Hats to the Lily Carnation. Luffy tries to attack but is pinned down quickly by the arrows of the Baron, while he watches his crew slowly get eaten away by the Lily Carnation. Another part of his body gets shot down immediately after each time he tries to attack, as each member dissolves in the lily. The last attempt he makes is by stretching out his head, catching the arrow in his mouth as he goes forward to make one last desperate grasp at the last remaining member, Zoro. But as he gets pulled in, Luffy gives in and falls back into the rock that he was pinned to. Luffy's crew is gone now, and he's all alone. He accepts this immediately. Seemingly all of the members of the Straw Hats have been devoured by the lily, which would mean that the Straw Hats die. This is basically the Straw Hats dying in front of Luffy. This is long before the scene in Sabaody where Kuma takes away the Straw Hats from Luffy. He's even more powerless in this scene, more unable to do anything in this scene. He's weaker, and it's just harder and harder to watch, just watching them slowly get taken away from him. Especially seeing Luffy completely helpless and hopeless, showing no real emotion or reaction to it other than just simple silence. There's not even any soundtrack playing at this point throughout the rest of the movie. It's like you're there. It's completely quiet. Baron gives Luffy the choice of life without piracy and his friends, or death. But Luffy doesn't give a response at all, just lying there cold. He takes out his bow and tries to get one last finishing blow in at Luffy's head, but Brief, like the badass he is, pulls Luffy down and lets the Baron know that he's not gonna let Luffy die. He takes him into his base, where the family's also hiding, and they all give him motivation. The little girl can still hear Chopper's voice, meaning that his crew isn't gone yet, which is more than enough motivation for Luffy to go back and fight. So he takes his straw hat and heads back up to face the Baron one last time, but this time with the help of Brief. This leads into, in my opinion, the best moment of this film. Luffy walking back at the Baron by himself and avoiding all of his arrows, grabbing one of the shots that were sent at Brief, snapping it in half as he turns around and does the pose of the toothbrush mustache pirates, making them official Nakama. However, things do not at all go right from here. In fact, it only gets worse for Luffy, as probably the darkest scene in the entire film hits. A plethora of arrows in front of the red moon aim right behind Luffy and shoot down at him from the sky, giving us a disturbing look at Luffy on his last legs that is extremely hard to watch, as he has arrows stuck throughout his body, sticking out of his arms, while he sees the Baron show the Straw Hats absorbed through the Lily Carnation, while he utters out for him to let go of his friends. He can't beat the Baron on his own. He needs the help from everyone he has left in order to beat him. It's the point of this film in general that Luffy is nothing without his friends, and can't do it on his own, which leads in to the true hero of this film. Yup, Courage the Cowardly Father takes out the Lily with the Baron's arrow, which removes all of the arrows from Luffy, and also removing all the power the Baron has, making his crew disappear as well, which gives Luffy the chance as he goes up for the finishing blow, one of the most satisfying punches in the entire franchise. You will never get this excited over a non-canon punch. After this, we get one last inner dialogue between the Baron and his crewmates, telling him that he should have just moved on after they all died on that stormy night, revealing the truth about the Red Arrow pirates. They all died besides Omatsuri on that night that their ship had been wrecked many years ago, around the same era that Roger had ruled in. The Baron had used the Lily Carnation on the island to create copies of the crew from his memories, and the movie ends with Luffy waking up to see the family, Brief, and his own crew all in good condition, as Robin looks and notices a small flower in the rocks with the goggles of the Baron aside from it, and the crew all gathered around Luffy for the final shot. This movie is one of, if not the best, that One Piece has to offer, as well as just being one of the best anime films out there as well, in my opinion. Seeing the crew go against one another so much makes it so much better because it all feels real. They don't feel like they're in a One Piece environment, they feel like they're in a more realistic environment. They've not been together for that long at this point in the story, maybe only a few months, and it really goes to show here. It takes advantage of the relationship that the crew has and how shaky it can really be. It doesn't feel forced at all and instead flows fluidly through the mistakes that the crewmates make. It shows you how flawed they really are as a crew, as friends, and especially Luffy's flaws as a captain. He was the most vulnerable here. He didn't even really win against the Baron since the biggest hit came from the father, because Luffy can't win without his friends. It's what I think is the main point of this film, that Luffy needs his friends to achieve his goal, which is always made clear throughout the story, but this movie takes it in a completely different direction. Usually in One Piece it'll have the crew working together as a team to help Luffy get up, but we see just how vulnerable he is when he doesn't have his friends. We're put in a situation where Luffy's alone. We're shown Luffy's weaknesses instead of his strengths throughout the entire movie. Another thing that makes this movie as great as it is the villain and the side characters introduced. The Baron in my eyes is the best One Piece movie villain. A problem that One Piece movies have is that the villains are always lacking somewhere, whether it comes to how big of a threat they are, or really to just the character itself, but the Baron doesn't do that. He's brief, though, with a very, very, very unbelievable design, works great in this film, as well as the father and his daughters. Now, I've praised this movie so much, but I do have just one issue with the film, and more specifically its ending, which is that the whole conflict between the Straw Hats that I said was very well done, it doesn't really get resolved at any point in the movie. By the end of the second trial, they hadn't worked together and were still angry with one another by the time they had all gotten captured, and yet it's all like it never happened by the end. Everything's just back to normal. This, of course, doesn't hold the film back at all, but I wish they would have at least reconciled a bit when everyone was back together at the end. Of course, it's not canon, so it won't matter, but it still feels like a big loose end that just won't ever be resolved. However, that's really the only complaint I have about this movie. Everything from the story, the villain, and even the take on animation they decide to use was all great to me. With how well it does everything, this to me is both the best One Piece movie out there, as well as the most dark content you'll see the series get. But that about does it for my review on the One Piece movie Baron Omatsuri and the Secret Island. If you like One Piece, just like One Piece content or anime content in general, feel free to subscribe to this channel and leave a like on this video, as I plan to make a lot more videos like this in the future, whether it's One Piece or any other show. Of course, if you have not seen the movie and still for some reason decided to watch this video, go watch it. It is very well worth the watch, even though I did kind of just spoil you on everything. Who cares about that? Go watch the movie.